The ancient iron gates groaned open. Leo clutched his worn satchel tighter. The palace loomed before him, a silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. It was called Blackwood Manor, a name that already sent shivers down his spine. He had answered an advertisement for a caretaker. The pay was surprisingly good, too good perhaps. He needed the money desperately. The wind whispered through broken window panes, carrying a scent of dust and something else. He walked up the cracked stone steps, his footsteps echoing unnervingly. The massive oak door creaked inward before he even touched it.
"You must be Leo."
She rasped, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement.
"I am Mrs. Blackwood, the last of my name tied to this place."
She didn't offer a hand, just beckoned him inside with a bony finger. The air inside was heavy, cold, and carried the faint, cloying smell of lilies. Mrs. Blackwood led him to a small, dusty parlour. A single flickering candle cast long dancing shadows on the walls. She pressed a folded piece of parchment into his hand.
"The rules? You must follow them to the letter for your own safety and for the peace of this house."
Leo unfolded the paper. The ink was faded, the handwriting spidery and old. He felt a prickle of unease. This was more than just a caretaking job. He scanned the list quickly. Each rule seemed stranger than the last. He wanted to ask questions, to understand what he was getting into, but Mrs. Blackwood's gaze was intense, almost predatory. It brooked no argument.
"The former caretakers. They did not always heed the warnings. This house remembers. It holds grudges."
Her words hung in the air, a chilling promise of unseen dangers lurking within the shadowed halls of Blackwood Manor. Leo swallowed hard, the parchment suddenly feeling very heavy in his hand. The first rule was stark.
Never under any circumstances enter room number 14 after the stroke of midnight.
Mrs. Blackwood's eyes gleamed with an unnatural red light as she emphasized the room number. Leo glanced down the long, dark corridor. He wondered which door bore that ominous number. He felt a strange pull, a morbid curiosity, but also a deep, primal fear. He quickly looked away from the corridor back to the unsettling old woman. The second rule followed swiftly.
"Always ensure the candles in the main hallways remain lit throughout the night. They dislike the dark intensely."
A small, thin smile touched her lips, but it did not reach her eyes. Leo thought of the immense size of the palace, the sheer number of hallways. Keeping all those candles lit would be a monumental task, a constant vigil against an unseen, unnamed threat that apparently thrived in the shadows.
"Ignore any whispers you might hear.
The third rule stated,
They are merely echoes of the past, remnants of sorrow. Pay them no mind, and they will eventually fade."
Finally, she read the last rule, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, almost breathless whisper.
"And this, young Leo, is the most crucial of all. Never, ever look directly into the grand hall mirror for more than a fleeting moment. Some reflections are not your own. Some things seen cannot be unseen."
The grand hall mirror, he hadn't seen it yet, but the warning painted a terrifying picture in his mind. Leo began his duties the next morning. The palace was even larger and more dilapidated than he had first imagined. Dust lay thick on everything like a funeral shroud. As he moved through the silent, cavernous rooms, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The eyes of the portraits in the long gallery seemed to follow him, their painted smiles turning into mocking sneers when he wasn't looking directly at them. He would catch movement out of the corner of his eye, a flicker of motion in a dusty mirror, but when he turned, there was nothing. Only his own pale face staring back, a fraction of a second slower than it should be. The whispers started on the second night, faint at first, like the rustling of silk or the dry hiss of sand. He tried to ignore them as Mrs. Blackwood had instructed. He told himself it was just the old house settling, the wind playing tricks. But the whispers grew more distinct, seeming to coil around him in the darkness of the long corridors as he went about lighting the endless candles. They sounded like voices, sad and pleading, sometimes angry. He even thought he heard his name once, a soft beckoning sigh that made the hairs on his arms stand on end.
One rainy afternoon, while attempting to bring some order to the neglected library, I stumbled upon a small leather-bound diary.
A profound fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Leo. The diary's words resonated with the chilling rules, with the unsettling atmosphere of the palace. He wanted to run, to flee Blackwood Manor and never look back. Yet a strange, insidious compulsion held him captive. It was as if the house itself had sunk its tendrils into his mind. The whispers intensified, no longer ignorable echoes, but clear, insistent voices calling his name, urging him towards the forbidden. The pull towards room number 14 became almost unbearable, especially as the clock in the grand hall ticked relentlessly towards midnight. One night his resolve shattered. He had to get out. He tiptoed through the darkened hallways, his heart pounding like a drum against his ribs. He reached the massive front doors, his hand trembling as he fumbled with the heavy iron latch. It wouldn't budge. It was locked, bolted from the outside, or perhaps by some unseen force within. Panic clawed at his throat. Suddenly the candles in the hallway flickered violently, one by one, and then extinguished, plunging him into absolute suffocating darkness. Desperation fueled his next move. He remembered the final, most ominous rule: never look directly into the grand hall mirror for more than a fleeting moment. But what choice did he have? He needed to see. He needed to understand what he was facing. He stumbled through the blackness, his hands outstretched until he reached the grand hall. He could feel the cold presence of the enormous mirror before he saw its faint outline in the gloom.